Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, The Power of Recognition, Engaging the Multi-Generational Workforce. My name is Ty, and I will be your moderator for today's 60-minute event. This program is being presented by HR Morning and is being sponsored by Achievers. Achievers' Employee Success Platform delivers proven employee recognition, continuous listening tools, and timely coaching tips for organizations to give their people ownership of the employee experience and to drive organizational success. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the chat box in the control panel. If they're regarding the subject being presented, I'll add them to the queue for questions at the end. Please remember that it is a violation of our copyright to record the conference. Now I'd like to introduce your speaker, Bob Vercoda.
Thanks very much, Ty. And just a little bit about me to start off. I've got about 30 years of experience in the human resource senior level seat, coming in at the entry level to all human resource departments and working my way up through various senior leadership, senior VP, moved into operations with human resources, been across small organizations of 3, 4, 500 up to 4 or 5,000, and have enjoyed the ride. Never thought I would stay in the human resources area, but it became such an experience and always changing that it just attracted me over and over again. So the power of recognition and the multi-generational workforce is something that I've experienced through time. And I have some pretty strong beliefs about how it can work, and the research that I continue to evaluate and check in on and read daily. So with that, let's get going. And first, why isn't this thing moving forward now? There we go. Our agenda, we're going to talk about recognition, but it's hard to talk about recognition without pulling in things like rewards, engagement, motivation. How do you attract, manage, and retain people? Because it's all connected together. And then we're going to talk about process, action, and tools. And there will be a couple of handouts that Ty and HR Morning will push out at the conclusion of today's presentation. First of all, let's start with some common understanding of definitions. You can see there rewards in recognition of service, effort, or achievement. That's the reward side. And you see they use the word recognition right in there. That's how these things get linked. Recognition, this is the second definition in the dictionary, not just to know who something or someone is, but it's the existence, validity, and legality. So when we talk about it from an employment standpoint and employee relations standpoint, it is about the contribution that people are making every day, every minute with customers, clients, up and downstream of your processes. So, and when we speak of engagement, we want to make sure that we know that this is all about what keeps you attracted to the work that you're doing, involved, and that in my sense, it's giving that discretional effort, that not the stuff I have to do to keep the job, but the stuff I can do and add into the organization to be most effective. And of course, culture, simply my short definition after years of studying books and long paragraphs, it is simply the way we do things here. And I'll tell you that your employees are the ones that really cement that in to every new hire, because even in my own life, I've experienced, I know what they told me during orientation training and the interview process, but when you got to the shop floor, when you got into the office setting, when you started kibitzing and talking with your members of your team and those around you, peers, there are some things that are said, and then there are some things that are done, and they aren't always the same. So let's talk a little bit about this culture of engagement and why it even matters. And we can see today that according to a source 2019 here, some quick research that PACOM did, it's one of the most important issues in recent years, this whole issue of how to get people engaged and connected with the organization through rewards and recognition. And it's because of the tighter labor market and the more pressure on human resources and others, owners, when they're recruiting, to get the right people and put them in the right places. And when we have a situation now where there are reportedly fewer job applicants than there are jobs open, and then when you look at the qualifications, we're really in many areas and many businesses that I'm working with as a consultant, they're struggling to find the quality of candidates. So here's why having a culture that's a strong and a healthy one and has a brand in the marketplace, so to speak, is very, very important. Other data that you can see there, lost turnover or lost annual sales and revenues, the potential due to turnover is about 11 billion. Engagement means lower turnover, lower absenteeism, and higher profitability. And some of those frustrations that I've had over many years over people who just balanced on the tightrope of attendance, you know, the job just wasn't really what they wanted, but they had to keep it because it afforded them a lifestyle, or at least having a job during tougher economic situations. And anytime that you can engage somebody such that they really want to be at work and they're glad to be at work and the contribution that they make. For example, and I've lived in the northern climes for most of my life. I had a gentleman that literally in a snowstorm skied in from 14 miles away on his cross-country skis during a snowstorm, and I had another person who lived a block and a half up the hill where they could have come out their front door and literally rolled down to the office. One made it in on skis, and the other called in as it was not able to get to work. So that's engagement. Just a brief touch base on what motivates us. Fascinating that you know, Dan Pink, he's got some good stuff out there. There's other people too, but it boils down to this: what do we like about our job in the way of independence and autonomy? Do we feel a sense of mastery? And maybe that isn't how we all start out at work. I certainly didn't. But as you continue to grow and develop your capabilities, you have to say that growing a mastery is one of those things that helps us. And of course, sense of purpose. Well, what's the reason to get up today? What's the reason to go into work today? What is it that I'm contributing in this organization? And who's letting me know? Critical part here. If we just have to make up this sense of purpose and whether I am accomplishing what the organization does and doing it in my own mind, that's one thing. But for many of our employees, they do like to hear that they make a difference. And so we have to align with what organizations want, and what people want is the magic of hiring right. We can't just go out and get people to fog a mirror. In other words, they're a live body to put in place. We really have to make sure that we're finding the right people, and that and we understand motivation, because designing the work culture, making sure that we have the proper recognition and reward programs in place that meet those needs of these employees. Further information related to Pink, and you can see him on YouTube too. Motivation: is it an activity-based job? Are you making widgets and it's based on how many you make and the quality of them? Then money is oftentimes the motivator. And if you have results-based outcomes, clients retained, those kinds of things, now we get into the purpose and the mastery and the autonomy components. Money still turns out to be a driver, and we'll talk more about that. Motivation: if you want to understand, ask these questions. You know, what am I rewarding? What am I being rewarded with at the psychological, emotional, and physical levels? And then what is going to get me to change? What is their motivation to change? So if I'm a supervisor and I'm trying to garner this engagement, this recognition reward process, and feel like I'm going to, you know, move the needle in the direction of improving motivation and as a result, the organizational performance, then we need to be able to understand the role that I'm playing at the psychological, emotional, physical levels. And physical has come in here more and more recently as a high valued concern, and it's maybe a reflection on our times. I don't know, but it's being tested more in some of the surveys. And of course, am I going to be able to get people to change? And why do I want to get them to change? Because so much today is moving so quickly that if you don't have people who are change capable, change resilient, change tools, support, etc., this could be a long slog for some of those folks and for you as their manager. There's a model that I use in presentations. It's the AMR, the attract, manage, and retain. We're not going to go through all of these today, but we will touch base on most of them. We're going to focus on the reward and recognition and to an extent employee development, but we will talk a little bit about, and have already, about the work and the leadership and the organizational climate. But this is another graphic in terms of how you can think about your role in human resources, your role as a first line manager, supervisor, your role as an owner, your role as a board member. In terms of the employee is what makes the organization successful. It might be your product too, and that any employees could deliver that level of quality product. But in most cases that I've ever worked in and consulted with and been a part of, the products are great, the services are wonderful, and it's the people that make that happen from an accuracy and a throwaway and a recognition standpoint, all the different elements. It still matters, the employees. So who is our workforce? And while we'll talk probably more about millennials today, and I have a couple slides that use that reference, we have in our workforce today primarily the boomers, the Gen X's, the millennials, the zennials, and we'll talk a little bit about them. My own experience and research that I've done over years says that, while we can attribute these to specific generations at this moment because we've given them labels, that most often what you'll see is people new into the workforce, whether they were new boomers back then, back in the 60s and 70s and 80s as they entered the workforce, they had similar feelings and desires as zennials do today. And as we go through life and we have those experiences, those kinds of motivating forces and what matters to them evolve through time, just as they evolve and their life evolves. Today's workforce, we can see how the millennials just became the largest group in the workforce back in 2017, and it's as soon as I get the update from Pew, I'll put that one in. But and you can see that we're not talking about the silent and greatest generation, but we do have some these Gen Xers, and the Zs are just coming into the work environment now, so that'll be included probably in the next 5 years. What do they want? Kind of the summary version of some long research. Boomers want purpose. They also are interested in money, and their focus today is more upon the transition into that next phase of their life, the retirement part. Gen Xers right behind them. They're interested in the money and the purpose. The millennials that just surpassed everybody as the biggest part of the workforce. Money is important to them as well, but also that passion about their work. They really want to know that what they're doing makes a difference, that their organization supports them, and that there's a clear link between their mission and the mission, vision, and values of that organization. The zennials coming in, interesting, health insurance. So, and the theory there from the researchers is that these people have seen the great debate in politics or at the social level and their own experience with, what is the need for health insurance? And for young people, that's kind of remarkable because they're still, kind of immune from health concerns, many of them feel. So they also want someone who they can respect, that they're going to be working directly with. We'll go into that a little more in terms of why people leave organizations or do they leave managers. A little survey coming out of SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Management, great resources there. You can see the different kinds of areas in terms of what are employees looking for in that survey, and typically any kind of a gap analysis where you're looking at very satisfied versus very important on the two-dimensional grid there. you go with the higher the gap is where you're going to focus your time and your effort. Well, not always, and that's because you, as in your organization, you need to look at those things. Perhaps for you, feeling safe in the workplace because of the nature of your environment, even though it shows 14% here, perhaps that for you is up higher. That's where those engagement surveys, those feedback tools and devices that you have in place are critical to reading those documents and getting the triangulation of other data in support. So, and by triangulation, I mean, you've got probably engagement feedback surveys, you've got perhaps new employees that you're doing some SurveyMonkey or other tools, you've got managers that are coming to you, hopefully you've got exit interview data, maybe retention interview data. All of these things need to line up and come together with certain themes or certain kinds of topics that are critical to success or could be changed or needs improvement. Again, we're not going to focus a lot on Gen X and Gen Y, but the millennials and why does it matter to them? But just there, as the largest group, I thought I would just highlight a couple points here. First of all, their digital world 24/7, and many of you out there are part of this. They like teams, and that means coaching. They're experienced with that. We have all kinds of coaches these days: life coaches, yoga coaches, finance coaches, etc. Speed and feedback and access to information is critical, and of course the balance. And when I talk about balance, and when it brings this up here from Dr. Novak's work, the balance is, it does look different from boomers to zennials, all through the age cohort. So, pigeonholing or assigning people based on their age group is not a great idea. You really need to be speaking to the individual because everyone can sometimes be at a different place, and that's why one size fits all doesn't necessarily mean it fits me. So how can we keep people around once we've got them in the door? And this isn't a webinar on necessarily on recruiting or talent acquisition, but once you've got them here, here's some concepts that are really important. Rewards and recognition are certainly there. If we're looking for designing programs and processes to get outcomes to keep people longer, we no longer have that concept of life employment. Number of jobs per career, that number keeps going up. But in terms of what the millennials are saying, and back to the Dan Pink kind of motivational ideas of independence, autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose, you can see them all here on this slide. Opportunities to learn new things, a boss who is a mentor, a coach necessary in other terms, and working with other people that are bright and creative and challenging and help me move forward and realize my potential. So these are the kinds of things that that we see as being critical motivators, and link us once again to that whole concept of how we can engage our workforce. Interesting here about the managers that we'd love to work for, and these are certainly people that I would love to work for and had a chance to work for and would work for again. Are we learning new things? Are they responsive and present? In the moment, are they with you, or is it the standard hello, good morning, goodbye, but really are not present in the work environment? And this is tougher and tougher as some of our environments are now kind of looser networks, not geographically always connected. So critical to some managers is, so how do I maintain this engagement and this reward and recognition for people that are spread all over the world, all over the United States, geographically, linked by computers and team assignments? And there are ways of doing that, and doing it electronically, bringing them in for certain specific occasions if possible, etc. Are we having good coaches and supporting them? Sometimes it's the manager, sometimes it's specific coaches that you want to bring in. Are we collaborative? Are we organized? Are we flexible? How encouraging are we? And this last one, instilling a sense of play and fun. That's an interesting idea, and that's one that play and work, 2 4-letter words. So how are we working on that in terms of the work itself? We know it's serious, but these 11 points are all things that managers are able to instill, the best of them. Not always all of them in the same level at the same time. Understand that. Their jobs are very dynamic, and but are they good at any of these? If not, how can we help them from a human resource standpoint? Are these parts of job descriptions that assign responsibilities to a manager in addition to output and finance? These are the people metrics responsibilities that should be included in those job descriptions and evaluative processes. 9 keys to engaging millennials. I think it's 9 keys to drop the millennials, and it applies to me. It applies to anyone. It just comes out of millennial research that was current. Help us learn, believe in us, tune into our technology, connect us, etc. How this plug into parents works, I really don't understand that part. But there's got to be something in there, and I'm missing it when I read through that research. So Gallup research has come up with 12 questions regarding your rewards and recognition. These are just examples. And one of the key things that I always bring up is, do I have a best friend at work? And this is one of those predictors of people leaving. That if you look at the data about people who leave organizations, when it's not about a poor relationship with the manager or a misalignment of the work culture, the values, the purpose, oftentimes what you find is underneath in those exit interviews and that research that's done is they just didn't have a connection here. They don't have one of these, and by best friend, I mean a close associate, someone they can talk with, confide in, respect, that cares about them in some way. And that's one of those things. You can read through the rest of those, certainly. How do we keep them? This is kind of a repeat, and it summarizes for how do we maintain the workforce and work with the whole recognition and reward process and keep engagement high. Are you helping us to grow and connecting to the cause, etc.? I want to spend just a moment here on the whole compensation, and by that it's not just money. As you can see, it's pay and benefits, and they have to be reviewed as fair. When we looked at that earlier slide about where does money play out in this whole engagement connection for all age groups, it's present. And by rewards and recognition, in terms of this area, and you may not have a lot of responsibility for this, it may be defined by certain other parts of the organization, but certainly HR and C-suite leaders design a compensation and a benefit system for the purpose of, and then you have to fill in the blank. And if that purpose is to, lead the marketplace for similar organization, to match it or to follow. In other words, pay as little as possible, but still keep the lights on and people in place. Those are just strategies from the lead to the matching the market to following the market. And when I talk about compensation, it's total comp, or TC, and that includes pay, which can be base and variable, along with benefits. And when you have benefits, you think of the core, those that are required and that you provide or assist by the employer contribution to something. Then there may be optionals or voluntary ones, and then there are the perquisites that just go along. Maybe it's just terrific parking. And in some environments, that's a huge issue, or transportation, or the company swag, or events, or who knows. There are many organizations have different reputations, and I know we're seeing some things being bandied about in media over General Motors and the strike and the health insurance. Those are the kinds of things that you need to assess and decide philosophically, operationally, what is your compensation approach. Again, it plays back into the attract, motivate, retain, and engage these critical resources. So why do people go? Well, in the exit interviews, it's back to the money and the super level of supervision. There's other factors, but they focused on these two just for this report. And then if you go back to those folks 18 months later, you find out that salary is down to 12% and supervision jumps to 24%. Still, it's not 100% either way. And as long as I've been reviewing this, which, like I said, is like 30 years, trying to figure out, so why do they go? Why do they stay? This is consistent. Research over research, the percentages can change, but if you look at following up with the same employee six months, 12 months, 18 months later, as in this data, the flip happens just about every time. So let's talk about our turnover rate and why that's important. This goes to information that you need to be assessing in your organization. They're leaving supervisors, not company. We've already talked about that, but it's about this number. And so what's your overall rate by job, by geography, by manager, by shift? Any way you can cut that and still have meaningful data. In other words, one person leaving out of 10 isn't meaningful data, probably. Usually from a statistics standpoint, you're going to need a number of a certain size based on the certain population. So the key is to help you find the places and the type of rewards and recognition that will affect your turnover rate. Turnover of 0 is probably not what you're looking for, and it's probably not healthy for the organization or for even certain employees. Some just need to go on with life and get to a different place and take their gifts and talents elsewhere. But what can we do in terms of turning that arrow, changing the slope of that line one direction or the other? Now, what can managers do if there's 70% of the variance in engagement scores? Maybe we need to look there. Are your managers getting their engagement score information? If not, hopefully you can find a way of incorporating that. It always is a problem with small departments, small work units, small supervisory groups, where you just don't get enough and to make it statistical, the reliability of the data, and you have to end up grouping small departments and small supervisory groups together. But you can also find this out in other ways via exit interviews, retention interviews, focus groups, and other methods. Again, triangulation of the data to find out where maybe you have this problem regarding the engagement, and then what's our job in terms of helping that manager to be more effective? Is there some coaching and assistance that person could benefit from? It's been said many times, if the supervisors aren't liked, admired, and respected, there's a problem. So here's where we go to those, developing their skills, making sure that they're accountable for this, not just the total number of units produced. Are you using 360 appraisals on those managers and supervisors? And most importantly, if we've got a problem there, we need to address it. Maybe it means moving them elsewhere in the organization and out of a supervisory role. Maybe it means moving them from the organization. So we've talked a little bit about rewards and recognition in our AMR model. So we're gonna, here's just some fun slides here for us. We know that recognition for achievement, we all like to be acknowledged for our contributions on a day-to-day basis. That's great. We also want to be able to celebrate a triumph. And in this case, it can be a personal one, it can be a professional one. It's as an employee, as an individual, it can be as a team, it can be as an organization. But what do you have from a celebration of accomplishment, triumph in this term? What are you doing with those people? And what are you doing with that opportunity for really cementing in that recognition of working in a great place? You want to always take an opportunity to get that mission, vision, value stuff out and celebrate those. And some of the best organizations I've worked for in my consulting experiences, they have these things going in action all the time. And in one organization, they happen to have 12 values, so monthly there's always a focus on that value. They never give up on working with their employees, because their employees there's always new ones every month. So in the course of a year, you've hired a bunch of people in the course of a year. When do they get around to talking about integrity and what that means for them in their job and as an organization? So in the course of a couple of years, if you've been there for 5 years, you may have been through the monthly mission, vision, value celebration 5 times. And hopefully it's being kind of retooled every time with, the newer language, newer connections, and examples of what it means in the workplace. Working with a particular client, resolving a client's issues. These are all the kinds of things that you can celebrate. Individual transitions, there's changes in career and life, and sometimes it's going on, sometimes it's a promotion, sometimes it's moving, sometimes it's you finished a certification or an award. Transitions are things to celebrate. Comfort in letting go, and this is not intended to be morbid at all, but death organizationally transitions to new places and stages. And people need processes and tools in order to help make that transition. And I can tell you a little story about working in a healthcare organization, and all of the nurses were on pagers, and they used to, at first it was a great thing, where they could get pages and who needs what down the hall in what room and from the desk, and then it became almost on all the time and obnoxious, and it became kind of a love-hate relationship. And they went to and these were the big clunky ones you had to wear on your belt kind of thing. And new technology came across, and some other improvements in process, and they held a ceremony. And what they did is they collected all the, they redistributed the new technologies, these little locator badge pins, things that were about the size of a quarter, that connected to their employee ID badge that they could wear and pin to them anywhere. And so they took all of these in this love-hate relationship, and they created an event. And what they did was they got one of the senior nuns that worked at this location. They put her on one of these small asphalt rolling machines, and they had her drive up and over this pile of pagers, and it created quite a visual, quite a excitement, and there was cheering and laughing and lots of different things. It was kind of that letting go. We weren't going back that direction. We were going forward, and thank goodness that phase was done, and we moved on. We also have to do things just for fun. And do we do things? Not necessarily a reason, just something we can do for socialization and relationship building, and not necessarily have it connect to the quarterly results or the survey team. Those are all great things that you'd want to have to celebrate, but sometimes there's just things that you do for fun. And in some organizations, they get together and they serve the community. They'll go out and get people within the work group to go serve a day at the homeless shelter, or meals and things. Top retention strategies, you can see them here. Of the 10, 7 of them are financial. 3 of them are not. You can see that in the highlights. Also, there'll be a handout, as mentioned earlier, that Ty will send out after the program, of 148 retention strategies. We also have 73 engagement best practices that he'll push out after the webinar today. So you can see the different kinds of things that are used typically, at least as sourced from World at Work in their survey. It goes down to the appreciation. A huge part of the relationship in any organization and people is all about listening to and observing what's going well and acknowledging it in a sense of a certificate of appreciation. And you can see that the lack of that is one of the reasons people leave. Just a little tip and a helpful make it stick kind of piece. Perhaps you can keep this by your desk or someplace. We want to make sure that when we are giving a recognition to people, that it's prompt, and that means it's got to be timely to the event. It's not one of those wait till dad gets home kind of things. It's specific. You know, what was it that you did? And we certainly know when a supervisor is trying to, you know, not necessarily he's required or she's required to do rounding every day and give feedback, and when they don't have specifics with it, it kind of lacks a level of believability. So make it specific and be sincere about it. You know, make that eye contact. Whatever your culture is, whatever that person is capable of, you can see sincerity, you can feel sincerity, you can hear it, but it's got to be sincere. It needs to be proportionate to the event. It's the story of the three bears: too big, too small, just right. And of course, the frequency, it needs to be, you know, not just before the annual reviews are expected to be done, but as they occur, when they occur, and that this is a relationship builder with the supervisor. And of course, individualized to the extent that it is an individual accomplishment. If there's praise to be given to a team, great. To a department, great again. Arrange those events as such. Another key action step in terms of the manager's relationship, teach them about performance. This kind of goes back to you know, that manager slide. Make sure that those performance appraisals are done regularly. A lot of HRIS systems today will tell you when they're late, 30 days late, 60 days late, etc. This affects me as an employee. It means I'm not valued. No matter how many times you say, it's really busy, Bob, I just couldn't get to your evaluation. You know, maybe once, but not the third and the fourth time. Frequent positive and meaningful feedback, and to help with the work group, a lot of organizations use different tools. DISC, Myers-Briggs, colors, all of these things are great tools. I'm not selling anything. Whatever works for you and whatever your organization is comfortable with, use those from a building communication skills standpoint. It also helps identify what our preferable methods are, what our typical responses are, helps us understand each other. And that can be real important from a reward and recognition and engagement standpoint, because you have created this relationship and continue to create a meaningful relationship. Another element of the AMR model is the employee development. We certainly want to make sure that we are working hard, as we saw in earlier slides, about what people expect, both the millennials and the zennials. They want their careers are early, young. They're not necessarily locked into this is what I do and the only thing I do. They're evolving, so development is a critical component of that reward recognition and keeping them engaged in your organization versus going somewhere else where they're going to get other development that they see as needed. We want to make sure that there's a regular plan for this. Sometimes retention interviews are used. It's a whole nother webinar. It's not part of the performance review process. It can be conducted by HR, the manager, the skip step manager, the next person up, or an outside consultant. But this is digging in particular key jobs, key roles, key areas where a loss would be important, would be a real challenge to the organization. You want to know what development is needed and this person's interested in from a career progression. Give them challenging assignments. Allow the employee to participate in this process of designing their development. And we're expecting growth, as we saw. Millennials, that's what they're looking for in many respects, and a culture of continuous learning as an organizational value. Going back to the culture, the way we do things here, learning is what you're going to be expected to do. Change is what you're going to be expected to do. And here are examples. Here's what you've said. Here's what we've done over time. And of course, has to make it personal. And it's not always a fact of jumping up, climbing the ladder vertically, particularly today in the populations that are in the work environment. A lattice, which means lateral, even demotions to work into a different area of the corporation, can be seen as very beneficial, both by the organization and by the individual. So these are opportunities that we need to think about in terms of career and different learning options. Coaches, mentors, and buddies, whatever term your organization uses. We all have had coaches. I've had mentors, but never called them mentors. I've always had buddies or friends at work, people that I could count on. And it's great for the acculturation process. Some people, organizations assign these to new employees. It may be someone from the work environment. It may be someone else. It's just to help them answer questions early so that they don't get frustrated and leave in that first 30, 90, 1 year, because that's when they're so vulnerable. Again, recognition, reward, engaging people quickly, and make sure that you have access to resources. If you're coaching or you're a mentor for someone and there's a need, you need to know in advance what you have the authority and capability of providing. So this is where training and providing support to these people, the coaches, mentors, and buddies, is important as well for organizational success. They need to know that understanding and development, and we already talked about the coaches and mentors that need training. So it certainly is a continuation process, and systemization into the onboarding process. Early on, I would say it starts right with advertising, screening your applicants, and certainly as you bring people on board, it's not necessarily part of that orientation, that day-long signing process. It really is about the onboarding more in-depth in terms of how those roles play out and are valued. Engagement strategies and the socialization component is critical. We need to structure activities, have a plan, follow your plan, evaluate that plan, make sure that you've got the role models available, providing new hires with the positive feedback, and continue training and development and celebrate. And mention the 73 best practices for creating a workforce. Ty will send those out. But the socialization part of this is where you need both structured and unstructured opportunities for people to get together and create those relationships. You know, that best friend, that buddy, that whether they consider it a mentor or not, which is important in the work environment. Even people that work remotely, create these connections, these linkages with other people that work remotely. And sometimes it's around age and stage and kids and community. Sometimes it's a whole different set of reasons that people connect and have value between the two that helps with that retention, engagement, and subsequent performance. More on the retention strategies and employee engagement. Listen, listen, listen. This is the solicitation, whether it's the interviews, surveys that you do, the interviews, through the work teams. It also feeds back into improving leadership and management. You've got to continually develop those folks and their skills based on the feedback that you're getting from the organization. And of course, from a recruitment standpoint, all 5 of these are related to improving your recruitment capabilities. Use behavioral-based interviews. You know, the predictor of success. What have you done before? An interview process. And you know, why is this important for rewards and recognition? Because getting the right people in the organization who will be responsive to those rewards and recognition means that they will be engaged. Your likelihood of engaging them will go up. Make sure that there is that coworker connection, the socialization, the fit to the culture, the mission, vision, values things. Using realistic job previews. Again, another whole topic we could take up, but it's a way of allowing people to self-select to be in the organization, or to say, I think I'll move on and look for something more suitable for my needs and purposes. Greatest thing you can do for yourself is making that self-selection process one where people opt out that aren't going to be great fits. They might have been perfect from a technical skills standpoint, but from the work culture, the values, the day-to-day processes that they'll be responsible for, they were not going to be here a long time and may have caused more disruption of the current work group than they would be a value. The realistic job previews, this is just a little bit that's been done by a company that without the realistic job previews, people start looking for another job quickly. And if you do it right, at least this is from the DDI Oracle survey, that number goes down significantly. And today, why is that important? It's because your resume, your application, your profile is out there on LinkedIn and Indeed and all the other websites 24/7, 365, and people don't stop looking for a job just because they accepted one. They don't pull down their connections and their profiles. They continue, and that means that they're being sought out by recruiters and by organizations that are putting those kind of parameters in their search. So they're getting unsolicited sometimes contact with various organizations, and therefore they could move quickly. So to improve the stickiness of your job and your job offer that will get people to stay and become more embedded, you want to make sure that they have a good understanding of what the job is, that onboarding works really well, and that improves the engagement, includes your performance. The situational analysis is stuff we've referenced or I've talked about already with the triangulation conversation. It's really about employee surveys and forums and turnover reports and retention interviews and comp and benefit surveys. That could be of your employees or of the market, or should be both. You know, where do we stand? It's the exit interviews of people as they go out of the organization, not the last day, and maybe not the first day they give notice, but at some point. Again, another webinar, but it's a process that can provide valuable insights to support all these other pieces of data, and that's what makes it effective for you in talking to the C-suite, your senior leaders, garnering the resources you need. When everyone's frustrated about what we're able to accomplish in turnover and productivity and meeting our expectations and results, our growth plans, you're a critical part of that strategic conversation, and you need the resources in order to be successful. Otherwise, it's just going to be frustrating, and unfortunately, sometimes we make a change before we in people before we necessarily know that they didn't really have the tools to be successful. So we create our action plan. You've all seen this before, the SMART goals. You need to expect and demand action and demonstrate effectiveness. So this is both of your managers and leaders in terms of what they're doing from an engagement and a rewards and recognition plan. There are various tools out there that speak to this, and organizations have bought on to different consultants programs that have managers and leaders out and about, whether it's the rounding process or something else where they have these measurable, obtainable rocks, goals, whatever they're called, to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing to improve engagement and that support those organizational results. What are the results? Did we change the direction of the curve or the line? Where are you adding the most value? Where can you put those scarce resources? And having a measurable, observable, time-bound, SMART action plan is the way to prove that your program, your idea, your plans are effective. I produced this. It's a summary of the AMR, that graphic, without going through the other three components. But you can see how organizational climate, leadership, recognition, rewards, how they sort out from an attracting, managing, and retaining people. This is kind of okay, you want to engage folks and to be most successful, There's enough on here that should help guide your planning and development. And you can certainly drill down and deeper into things, of course, that make it unique and appropriate for your environment. Another little model that can be useful from another organization, where we feel valued, where I feel valued and involved, you're going to get me engaged. Now, all of those components around that circle are also key parts of that model. Another way of looking at, do you have a suggestion process or a feedback, I did something with this? Are people growing in their jobs? Are managers talking with employees, and are managers being assessed for their ability to listen and engage with their employees? All of these are components we could spend more time talking about. And one of the things that we need to address is what are those disengagement drivers? And these are the things that we're trying to take and at least neutralize these 5 areas. When we talked about maybe not leading the market, but not lagging the market, maybe being in the market, annually reviewing this, and in my own life, it was at least an annual compensation and benefits review. And for some jobs that were very, we'll say, red circle, hot jobs, a lot of things were happening in the environment. Sometimes that was done on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, because that's just, you wanted to give the message back to that employee population that you were looking out for their well-being, that you didn't want them coming to your office to say, hey, I just got this offer from across the street, down the road, in that other town for $3 an hour more. I really don't want to leave, but what's the deal? And if you don't know, then you should find out, and you should make sure that you're addressing these on a way that's consistent, that your employees know about it, that level of transparency, that this is what you do. From a look at those disengagement drivers, comp and benefits in particular, working conditions, that can be the physical environment, that coworkers, you're dealing with the ones that are not helpful in a direct and appropriate way, and that you're keeping communication. And some people have said, communication is really the black hole you can never fill. It's also something that you shouldn't get annoyed that you keep the communication process engaged and you don't get a whole lot of feedback on. Electronics today, 24/7, 365, pushing things out. There needs to be, from an expectation of our workforce, a way to see what's going on in the organization. That might be the monthly newsletter that's posted on the intranet, to text messages that go out regarding certain issues or accomplishments or feedback, gained a contract thanks to Bob or the team or whatever that is. So communication is critical. And the engagement drivers, the things that help people stay with their job, is that advancement, autonomy, growth, recognition, alignment. Circles all the way back to that motivational slide that I used the Dan Pink material on, and the others. It's all about, what is it that fires me up in the morning to come into work, that keeps me engaged? Not that I don't have frustrating days, and you really wonder sometimes, but overall, these are the things that make the work life for a period of time with this company, really a wonderful, beautiful thing. So we've already talked about dealing with the disengaged. Are they in the right seat? To improve organizational performance, though, you must address the disengaged or those who are underperforming. And as many CEOs as I've had, and the interviews and the research that's done, they would say that, to hire slower, take more time and make sure we got the right person, and to fire faster. And I don't necessarily mean fire is the right thing to do, but certainly look at their skills and abilities and address people that are disengaged or not performing well. You need to take that action, coach, mentor, correct. And in the coaching world, you don't ignore good people either. I don't have to check in with Bob. He's been doing a great job for 23 years. He'll be just fine over there in the corner. That's, that's not coaching. Make sure that you're good people and not just the people that are underperforming are getting your time. And typically, I know it was for me. I would have said early in my career that the problem people were getting 80% of my time, and the great people were getting 10% of my time. And that just wasn't fair. And I worked hard over years to try to make that, and even created my own score sheets to make sure that I was following up with the good people and they were getting as much time. Uh, and uh, and I noticed the difference. I noticed the difference in the good people and the conversations we were having in their performance reviews and those one-on-one conversations about what's going well, what could I do differently, where do they see themselves in 6 months, 5 years, whatever. The old praise in public, discipline in private, nothing new there. But you keep the employees you deserve. That's that note to self. And at one point, I had that across the on my wall in big letters, because that was a reminder that where I invested my time and attention were the people that I wanted to have and would keep. So let's talk about our 10 C's of employee engagement. This is all around the rewards and recognition, comes out of some survey work. We want to make sure we have connection and compassion. We want to have opportunities for career development. Clear vision, this is coming from the organization. Even departments and sections need to hone that down and make sure it's clear at the employee level about how they contribute to the success of that work group, that department, and overall the organization. That's so important. It seems so simple, but it's so important. Expectations and feedback continuously. Some are giving up the annual performance review and doing more with things on a monthly, quarterly basis. We talked about congratulations and celebrations. Make sure that there are opportunities for everyone to contribute. Control and autonomy. Back to Dan Pink again, where that autonomy is a critical part. But you want to be able to make sure that that the control of the work environment is not the control of leadership as much as within the control of your employee group in terms of their environment and their resources that they need to be successful. Collaboration is more and more important. Very few jobs today are put them in a corner and feed them with a slingshot kind of environments. They truly are those places where upstream and downstream and lateral are critical in order to be successful. Things are so complex today sometimes. And even the salesperson who's on the road all by him or herself, they have to collaborate with a lot of not just shipping and receiving, but order processing and all the other components of the organization for them to be successful over and over. And the credibility and integrity of your processes, of the organization, of you as a manager and a leader is another way that we cement engagement, make sure it's as high as it can be. And we have a purposeful community. It means your whole employee population, there is a purpose. The organization's vision, mission, values are played out there. We're at the end of our hour. I've got a few more things for you, some other ideas on thank yous and things you can do. These will be included in the materials. Student loans is another way that rewards and recognition employees are using to help people stick with the organization. It comes under that benefits side of things. And then there's some top 10 recognition things that are just kind of an easy summary. And using technology and social media to publicize accomplishments is important. More and more and more today. And then there's a whole bunch of websites you can go on and find lots of ideas. And with that, I'll turn it back to Ty, and we have some time for Q&A. Ty, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And now I'd like to take your questions. If you have questions, please submit them into the chat box. And I will wait a few minutes or a minute or so for your questions. Okay, Bob, I do have a first question came in. Uh, how do you keep yourself as the HR manager inspired in order to keep motivating your employees?
What a great question. And after, uh, how did I keep myself inspired over 30 years? That's right. When, especially when it kind of feels like it's the same stuff coming in over and over again. But from a rewards and recognition standpoint, what kept me inspired was knowing that this does make a difference. It makes a difference to every employee in the place, that their life is better, that their experience is better, that our organization is better as a result of the rewards and recognition and engagement of people at that visceral, psychological, emotional level is compelling. And if nothing else, the counting and pouring, the transactional stuff that HR can do and do very, very well, and has now been automated to a great degree. Good wages and benefits, good salary compensation systems, ranges and rates, and things like that. The technical side of things, those are things you can become excellent at and put into a process and get done. This area is one of those areas that's we talk about the soft side and the hard side of different works. The most difficult parts are the soft side of work. These kinds of things of dealing with recognition of employees. And for me, it was understanding, and I think for others that I've talked to, my peers over many, many years in conferences and things, is the contribution that you make and that your senior leadership, the people you report to, know that this makes a difference, that your heart's in the right place, your efforts are in the right place, and it's showing results. I could show results. I couldn't always. Things got better as I learned more and more about um, identifying the metrics that are important for the organization. And in some places, it might not be a good fit for me, for you, for any of us. It's about those relationships, the people that value the human resources component, that feel it makes a difference. So that's how I kept myself inspired. I also look to my mentors, both in the organization and outside. I needed to have people outside the organization that I could talk with on the phone, meet after the conference and visit about frustrations, successes, accomplishments, and how I add value. So good luck. That's keeping inspired. Sometimes we just need a break, and I was fortunate enough to be able to always be in a family situation where we took periodic breaks, a week here and a week there throughout the year, to recharge, to think about little private time, to think about what I'm adding as value to this organization. So good luck. Being inspired is important.
Thank you, Bob. And the next question reads, do you think that training managers is another way to improve the work environment?
Absolutely. Management development is my doctoral research in organization development was all about how do you keep people motivated and engaged, and the managers critical to that. And if you don't have a management training program, funding, capabilities, and this means assessing too. I mean, assessment centers are, because some people just are not cut out for this job. And one of the great successes I can think of was a 13-month management development program that the education director and I developed, and every month was a different topic. And after month 6, one of the attendees came in who was a budding supervisor, new, came in and said, do you think it would be okay if I went back to my other job? I don't know that at this time in my life, I can do this. And that was not a failure. That was a huge success. So exposing people to the management responsibilities, giving them the tools, holding them accountable is really important. And it's I think it's underfunded. But then I think a lot of things in HR were typically underfunded. But you have to put resources, scarce resources, where they're going to do the most good. So that's going to be your call. But I'm fully behind management training and development and ongoing. You'll find people out there that just have the gift. I don't know where they got it or how they got it. Those are the folks that you need to partner with, get on your focus group, your ad hoc committee to help you develop maybe your internal approach to this. But some are very capable. I don't know how they came about it, but they do have characteristics and skills that just seem to delight the employee group that they're responsible for, and they wouldn't think of going to another department or service even for more money and better hours. So
Thank you, Bob. And our last two questions, they kind of go hand in hand, so I'll put them together. Rewarding employees with money or gift cards from an accounting standpoint is added income. Do you tax the employees, or do most companies cover this? And then the other question, kind of along the same lines, any suggestions for driving engagement in an environment where funding is not available to help?
Okay, first question. Yes, I've dealt with this over and over again. And of course, your finance department should be up to date on what's required from the tax obligations, federal, state, and local. The $50 de minimis definition included as income and therefore taxable. Yep, done it all different ways. In one case, we were giving out $100 bills for something at Christmas, and the senior leadership decided to plus it up to cover the taxes so that everyone would get $100. Now that was really complex because everyone has a different withholding and a different status. Good thing it was a year end and we could find out where they were and how they were being withheld. Now, it didn't mean that we had the right taxes that were added on, but then that became taxable too. So the $100 became $123.50, and the $23.50 added another component of the earnings that resulted in additional taxes. So you get the complexity there. You can also just say, hand out the $100 bills and tell them, yeah, this is taxable, and it'll be added in and it'll come out in the wash at the other end. Same thing with gift cards of certain value. Do I know companies that just give out gift cards and don't worry about it? Yep, I do. Do I raise it when I do an audit? Yep, I do. And then their auditors and their financial team can address it. Is it a high risk or not? But everything from the turkeys and hams to seats at the sports games, all of these things, if you're an organization that's going to get audited or has a history of being audited or whatever, you need good advice in this area. And I always said, we're going to play by the rules. If this is what we want to do, here are the rules. Here's how we have to plus it up or understand or communicate that this is going to be a taxable kind of thing. Now, the funding, how do you do recognition when there's funding that's not available? Then you have to do all of the kind of the soft funding. And I don't mean to go and have bake sales and car washes in order to get enough money to do events and celebrations, but a lot is available to you from just a communication and celebration and recognition and acknowledgement of contributions at that level, all through the internal communications, the external communications. Sending a letter home to the house is one way some organizations have done some acknowledgement and recognition, where the family gets to read that Bob did a really great job in contributing to the department and the organization and successfully completed this on time, under budget, ahead of schedule, whatever that is. But it's not all about the money. And hopefully out of those 148 plus 73 items, you'll be able to go through there and with your highlighter, find some of those that aren't going to cost you money from a budget standpoint. They are going to cost you money from a time and people resources standpoint. That's just what it is. So, okay, Ty, thanks.
Thank you, Bob. And that was our last question. So I will turn it back to you for any closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Great questions. Thank you very much for asking those. And I wish you all the best in engagement. And it's, like I said, it's an area of organizational psychology and organizational development and motivation. What is it that makes us do what we do? That is such fertile ground for unique and specific applications in your work environment and the subsets in your work environment. That's the inspiring part. That's the part that makes it cool every day that you can come in is how can I link to this population and be effective, and that shows up in an organization in those employee engagement surveys, and it shows up in your turnover, and it shows up in your brand as being a place people want to work, where you have a group standing in line for the next available jobs, not you're out there trying to find scarce resources and you're not getting anyone responding to your emails or your postings on the internet or on the web, or your hosted recruiters aren't having success in finding people willing to take your jobs. Part of it is that brand, and if you can get out there and create that, it'll be beneficial for the whole organization in terms of performance. So good luck, and if there are more questions, please route them through our host today. And thank you very much for HR Morning and Achievers for allowing us to get together. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks again, Bob. On behalf of HR Morning and Achievers, I would like to thank you all for attending the webinar. This concludes our program.